Before we get started with this episode, we have a major favor to ask you.
If you could subscribe, like, and comment, especially with somebody that you'd love to see on the show, we would really appreciate that, and it would be amazing.
This helps us more than you know. In fact, once we hit 1,000 subscribers, and that is our goal, we are going to choose 2 of you to come to our very first Shoreline Show meetup with our team and our past guest.
And if you want more of the Shoreline Show, you can get on us on all the major audio podcast platforms.
Now, let's get on to the next episode.
Hey, welcome to this week's episode of the Shoreline Show. I have something that I've been wanting to talk with you guys about for a while now, and it's on my heart because I think a lot of us are dealing with it, and I think it's going to be good to share it with you. The thing I want to talk about is your mind, the valuable real estate that's in your mind. Obviously, I'm relating everything to real estate because I'm in real estate, right? But it is true. If you have somebody living in a house and you own rentals, you don't let negative things and people that are damaging the house and beating it up stay there. You evict them, right? If you have a good tenant, you take care of them, right? If they need some things done, you make sure things are taken care of in the place, and you take care of people and you cultivate that. I think we have a tendency by what we are and the environments that we're in, we let the negative things linger a little too long. I think about like we are an orange, right? And if you have an orange and you squeeze it, does lemon juice come out? Does grape juice come out? No, orange juice comes out. And we're very similar, humans are, in the same exact way. You know, if you start to think about it and you're like, okay, what if we start to have bad things, which life is going to have bad things happen. If you're on planet Earth, which I'm assuming everybody on this episode is on planet Earth, bad things are going to happen. We're going to have car accidents. We're going to have natural disasters. We're going to have death. We're going to have these things that happen in our lives. But when the world starts to squeeze you, what does that mean for you? And I think a lot of it is determined by what we put in, you know, and who we hang out with. You look at the average people that you're around. So you take the 5 people that you're around on the average day. Are you bringing up the average of those people, or are you bringing them down? It could mean anything. It could literally mean spiritually. It could mean financially. It could be any aspect that you can imagine. It could be spiritually, financially. It could be physically. It could be emotionally. It could be all these things. You're the average of the first 5 people you're around. Now, there's days that those 5 people that something could go bad, right? You could have had your girlfriend break up with you, or you got in a fight with somebody, or you got in a car accident. And it's not saying you always have to be this positive person that shows up and you always, but there's a way to handle it, and to always think that you have a responsibility to bring that average up, or you have the responsibility to bring the average. You don't have a responsibility, but you can bring the average down of those people. So I'm saying consider the people that you're around and the responsibility that you have to bring the average up. Now, I think there is some situations where it's unfortunate where people can't get out of it. My heart really goes out to these kids that are in public schools and in schools and environments, kind of like I was in manufacturing. You know, I was in manufacturing for many years and I couldn't control that environment. And it was a very negative environment at times, you know, and as a boss and as a leader, people there's a huge responsibility that people have. I think of the same thing with school leaders. You know, as a principal, and you have this environment and you might have bullies in the school, you might have these things that are going on in schools. It is a huge responsibility on them to bring the average of all those kids up in the mentality to do that. Now, I do know of situations in schools where the whole attitude is and everything is coming down, and you feel bad for these kids. No wonder why kids are filled with anxiety, their depression, and people are these days, because they have environments that they cannot control. They can go all day long. They can go to church. They can read positive books. They can do these things, and they're going to do everything they can to bring the average up. But what happens when the 4 people you're around are super negative and super bad? See, I'm a firm believer of changing your environment. If you're not in a good environment, go look for a good environment. If you're not in the company that you don't like to be with, go find one that is bringing your average up. Don't stick with people that are not going to go in the direction that you want. You know, I see a lot of people, and that's why I'm a firm believer of watching what you do and what you put in. You look at like social media and what it's doing is it's telling us what we should believe in, although it's not to the core who we are. Social media says, oh yeah, you know what, you should have all of these things, where it's like, okay, I want this house, I want this car, I want all of these things, but it's not real people you guys are around. I always kind of think about it when my kids, if I watch all these TV shows and all these things about like things that are happening, and these people that maybe are on yachts or that live in the Hamptons, or you watch all this stuff in the TV shows that you're around, but you're not hanging out with those people to get the nitty gritty details of why they are who they are and what it took to get there, you're just having a false perspective of where you're going. But if you're hanging out with them and saying, okay, I know this guy, it's not on TikTok, but I personally know this guy, and he has the things that I might want to be around, hang out with those people. Don't just sit there and watch them on TikTok and sit in your room, because you're only going to see the end result and not the way that it took to get there. I'm a firm believer of getting rid of all the distractions in your world when it comes down to like what is real. I think we're living in these fake worlds and we don't see the reality to get to the real world. We're just living in these fake worlds. And for an example, I think about all these TV shows that we watch, all these movies that we're watching, all these products that we're buying, and we think that it's going to get us to this end goal, but it's not helping us in any way. We live in a real world. You have to hang out with real people. Pay attention to the 5 people you're around. Really focus in on it. Don't let everybody tell you that it's like everything is perfect over here, but you don't see, again, the nitty gritty of it. I go and I think about like the 5 people that you're around, and for an example is, if you go to a grocery store and you have cherry Coke, cherry 7-Up, cherry Pepsi, you have all these cherry flavors. That's just cherry. Think about like grape and all this stuff, but you got just cherry, and you don't get your cherry Coke, and you have to go to cherry Pepsi that day. People these days are losing their crap over this stuff, you guys. Seriously, it's absolutely ridiculous. And they're taking it and bringing this negativity. And this is just one example, but it could be something where somebody told you something you don't like to hear. Or it could be many other things. But imagine the 5 people, and there's one group that the 5 people don't get their cherry Coke, but they are leaders, right, in what they do, and they don't bring the average down to the people they're around. But then you have another group where they're not leaders. They're people that are very negative, and they don't get their cherry Coke. They have their cherry Pepsi. It could bring the average of that group down. So you have one group skyrocketing. You have another group losing their crap over here. And then you're over here like, what group do I want to choose? You should always consider being careful of the people that you hang out with. I mean, it's extremely important. I'm very careful because of the average I hang out with, of the TV shows that I watch, the movies I watch, the influences I watch. We just got done with the holiday season, and I'm seeing these people where they're watching these horror shows, right? They're watching all these scary movies. They're listening to terrible music, and in my opinion, to where it's like constantly fear and anxiety that they're putting into their mind when it comes to horror shows, like scary things, negative thoughts, negative feelings. And then they go to a school where it's negative environments, and then they wonder why they're losing their crap. And it's no surprise to me. And it's like, okay, well, why? Well, it's because you're only putting in negative things. And when this world starts to squeeze you, you're going to end up being exactly what you put in. So my recommendation to all of you guys is just watch what you're putting in, because people will put stuff in. If you have vacant real estate in your mind, people are going to find ways to fill that. If you have a vacancy in your house, you're going to have squatters come in, you're going to have things come in, and you're going to have the same thing. And why do you think these social media platforms like TikTok are coming in? Because they want to take up that vacant real estate in your mind, and they want to figure out what makes you tick and what makes you talk, right? Like, seriously, like, think about this stuff. It's crazy, you guys. And that's why I'm a firm believer, if you take up that empty space in your mind and you fill it with the things that you want to choose to fill. I think there's a lot of good things in this world. I think comedy, but it's a context that you put it into your mind and saying, okay, what is it that I'm doing, and what is this going to affect me in my life? I mean, I think I'm very much a believer of like reading books, right? Like putting in things like, Napoleon Hill, like Robert Kiyosaki, like all these like positive things and positive people that have affected who I am today. And I think that's why I go and I join clubs because I want to be the average people I hang out with. So I joined a club. I'm a member of the Economic Club of Grand Rapids. Everybody there is super influential, right? They all own businesses. They are all doing things. The reason I go there is because I want to be around the average of those guys, right? If the average person I'm hanging out with in that group is people that have done things, and it doesn't have to always be financially. It could be people that have done mission work. It could be people that have done nonprofits. It could be all these types of people. But I want to be people that have been around people that are doing things in life, that are hustling and grinding to greatness. And that's why I join groups like that, because I want to be the average of the people that I'm hanging out with there, right? I mean, I always think about my kids, what would be the difference? And I'll let you guys answer this question. I don't think there's bad things to hang out, but if you lived in a small town where there's no jobs, we know some towns out there that there's really no jobs out there, right? The only jobs that you have are like gas station jobs because they're just, tourist towns, right? Essentially some of these. What would be the difference of growing up there where you're living off of welfare, right? Or you turn around, and I'm not saying those are bad, or you turn around and somebody growing up there, but then growing up, let's say in the Hamptons, where they're around people that are starting or like Silicon Valley, where people are starting like Facebook, and they're doing all these crazy things. I'm a firm believer of just watching who you hang out with, being careful with it. What would happen to that kid, right? If one grew up one place and one grew up the other. If you have a choice, change your environment. If it's a negative environment, change it to a positive environment. If you don't like the company that you work for, go to one that's actually breathing life into you and talking about good things. If you're watching a lot of negative TV shows, watch some funny comedies or things that inspire you to take risks. One of my favorite places that I ever went to was in Fort Myers, Florida. It was the Edison, I don't know if you'd call it his compound. I don't know what you'd call it, but it was the Edison where he had his family home. And Edison knew this. So what he did is he went to, I believe it was Harold Ford. I believe it was the Ford. He actually picked up his house here in Michigan. And this was way back in the day. And moved his house, Ford's house, all the way to the Edison compound where they had this barn where they would think and they'd be creative together. Because you know why? He's seen the power of having somebody around him that thought on the level that he did, that knew that he was going to bring him up. So when you're around your family, you're around your friends, and you're thinking about these things, I'm asking you guys to think and say, what is it that I'm doing for the people I'm around? Because you do have a responsibility. If you don't think you have a responsibility of the people that you're around, even if it's your brother, your sister, your coworkers, you do have a responsibility. I'm not saying that I've always done well with this. There's times that I have been negative. But once you realize that it is a responsibility, you have to take that seriously, because some people can't control it, right? They can't control the environments that they're around. So just be careful of like what you're doing. And especially if you're a school worker, my heart goes out to these young kids that are stuck in schools and they can't get out of those environments. I'm thankful because I homeschool my kids for that reason. So my kids can choose what environments they're in. And people will say a lot to us. They'll be like, oh yeah, aren't your kids discouraged that they don't go to school or they don't have any friends? I guarantee you my kids have more friends than a lot of the people that go to public schools, because they can't control their environment. My kids can control the environment they're in. They're picking the teams, the groups. They're choosing the people they want to be around that are influencing them, and that is bringing them to be who they are, right? Instead of them being stuck in a public school. So what I'm asking from you guys is to really just consider, what are you putting into your mind? Are you putting in negative thoughts, or are you putting in positive thoughts? Are you hanging out with negative people, or are you positive? What are your environments? That's what I'm asking you guys just to walk away with today and just think about, what could I do different to impact my life in a positive way? I hope you guys find value out of it. And yeah, that's all I have for today. Have a good day.